Hello everyone! So today I'm going to start off by showing you the dies that I'm using. I'm using Lawn Fawn's stitched hillside borders, I think that's what they're called, and one of the border fences or picket fence styles. I have a cut from the Cricut Stretch Your Imagination cartridge in the stretched version and some butterflies I had left over from another project. So to start with, for this slimline card, which is what I'm going to do, I'm going to take some milled lavender distress ink in the regular ink, and I've got a MFT cloudy border, stencil die. Stencil die? I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Stencil. And I'm just gonna ink from the stencil onto the cardstock. It's actually some watercolor cardstock because I quite like the texture of watercolor cardstock with any sort of background. I just think it gives a lovely soft texture, especially with sky backgrounds. So I generally will grab the ink and then start on the stencil and work my way off the stencil very lightly, but even with a light hand, you can see you can get quite a lot of color on there. And I'm just turning the stencil each time to get a different layer of a different sort of style of little clouds. And then once I've done that, I'm just going to clean off my stencil and my work surface a bit. And of course I'm going to spritz it with water. So when do I not do this? I mean, it's just like habit. And because I was thinking I would also add some splatter to this background, and I was trying to figure out the best way to do this. So I start off with just spritzing it onto my work surface and then picking up the ink with some water, and it really sort of, the same color on the same color would normally work quite fine, but I wasn't getting enough intensity of color, so I decided to use a smaller amount of water and a acrylic block and just flick it off the edge of that, and that seemed to work much better in this instance. If the color had been a slightly darker color, same sort of color wave, like purpley sort of colors, that would have worked as well. Or if I'd used white or black paint to splatter or something like that, that would have worked really, really well. But this turned out well. I liked it. So I just dried it off a little bit and then used a paper towel for some of that excess moisture that was still there. Now I'm going to take some more mowed lawn, can't talk tonight, mowed lawn distress ink as well, and along the edge of this sort of citrusy coloured cardstock, I think this is Lemon Lime Twist Stampin' Up! Cardstock from forever ago, but I again just spritzed it with some water after I'd inked the edges. It's not a watercolour paper, so it's not going to do very much at all. And so I did the same technique by flicking some of that ink, putting it on an acrylic block and then flicking it onto what will be the grassy bit. Again, it just adds a bit of texture. This works great if you use different shades of brown, which you would have seen in my previous video from yesterday, to create like a sandy look. That's a really good look. So just drying this a little bit as well. And now I'm going to figure out where I'm going to put some of these elements. So my picket fence I left as white because, I don't know, picket fences to me have to be white, so I think they just look really, really cute like that. So the first thing I decided to do was actually stick these two together because they've got the same sort of slope on them. It was really quite easy to line them up first and then decide where I wanted them on the card. I was hoping that I could get 2 layers of the grass at least, and possibly even the fence, but it wasn't actually wide enough to be able to cut in half for the width of the card, if that made any sense. In other words, that the grass and the fence weren't long enough so that I could have 2 pieces of it to layer. So I'm just going to stick with one, and it turns out cute and it still looks really, really sweet. So I was happy in the end. And then I know that the grass is the right sort of height that I want, So I just trimmed down the excess of the white piece, so the fence piece. And now I'm just going to decide which part of the fence I want to use. So in the end, I decide to just put a piece of tape along the bottom section of the watercolor paper, and that way I'm not going to get it into the sort of the areas of the picket fence, so it would be sticking through the picket fence, and then also it meant that I didn't have to try and line it up on the back of the fence and grass piece before trying to get it onto the cardstock. So, because I always put it in the wrong place. And then I am going to pop up my little bunny on all these eggs that he's painted. Well, he hasn't painted them yet. I just gave something away. At the back of his head, there's no backing piece. This is a very old cartridge, so it's very simple in its design. So there's no sort of there's layers, but it's not sort of, it's more simplistic, if that makes sense. But it's very cool. And so the back of his head, he kind of his mouth and his not his nose, his mouth and his eye would have been just whatever color cardstock was behind it. So I decided to add a little piece of the same sort of pink that I'd used for one of the eggs. I just cut a random little piece out and just stuck that behind it. So his eye is pink. And this is not red, but you know, he has a pink eye and he has a little pink mouth. So I thought it was cute. And then now I'm just sticking that flat to the card base. So this card base is about, I think I did it at 8, I want to say 8 by 7, folded at 3.5. So it's sort of like a 3.5 by 8 inch, thereabout, inch card. And then the layer on top is just 1/4 of an inch smaller, so the watercolor piece of paper. And then I've taken from the one of these stamp sets I would have showed you there, Easter Party, is that what it's called? I've taken one of the stamp sets from that, one of the sentiment stamp sets, I should say, stamps from there. I can't talk. What is the matter with me today? And because I haven't got very much in the way of, you know, there wasn't, I was going to go with a brown, but then I thought actually there is a little bit of black on this. So I decided to just, excuse my head, I had to reline up the words because I didn't stamp it very well. This is the thing when you stamp direct to your project, is that things might not line up quite right. But I just took a really small, a really fine pen and just decided to try and fix that. It's not perfect, but it's fine. And then these leftover over butterflies, I'm just going to bend them in the middle. Anytime you have something like butterflies, I would always bend them in the middle. You're not hurting them, don't worry. And then just try and stick them on. You can either use a wet glue. I'm using some glue dots, and I'm just using some really tiny ones, so I sort of manipulate them at the back of said butterfly, and just so that they'll stick kind of in the middle of the butterfly, and then you can kind of move the wings up so that they have that dimension. Now the thing that I didn't realize my camera died on me, what I did was I took some Nouveau drops, and I've slowed this down a bit more for you guys, and I actually created what would look like he'd painted the, you know, like the decoration he painted these eggs with. And so I used some white, some pink, some purple, and I'm going to show you now anyway. So let's just go through that instead of me trying to remember. So wisteria purple for the sort of purpley ones, and also the tip of his brush I added on there. And then I have this pale periwinkle, which is a jewel drop, so it's kind of like a translucent sort of shade, and that went over the pink because I didn't really have a pink that would work. And then I have the Gloss Simply White, which is again just a glossy white, which I did on the blue eggs. And I just decorated them with different patterns. There's no rhyme or reason. The brush I then used some glossy accents on, and then the White Blizzard, which is one of my favorites. It's like a clear, sparkly, and very shiny glue drop I put on the butterflies. This is a very weird video today. My voiceover is really bad, but anyway, I'll see how it goes when I play it back, and maybe it'll make the cut, maybe it won't, maybe I'll be doing this again. But anyway, have a happy Easter. We're not that far off from it, I don't think. It's a few weeks time. Oh no, maybe a little over a month. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this, guys. It's a bit random in the voiceover department, but I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you drag out some of your old Cricut cartridges and see what you've got, and create some fun stuff. And I will see you next time. Bye.